The red dust swirled across the barren plain. Nothing moved on the surface of planet KX-42 except the dust and the 6 humans in their white protective suits. "This is a waste of time," said Captain Jiwoo, standing with her hands on her hips. Through her helmet visor, her expression showed her frustration. "There's nothing here." Dr. Ta-sung did not look up from the device in his hands. The small metal box beeped softly, its screen showing a pulsing blue dot. "The signal is real," Ta-sung said. "It's coming from somewhere under the ground, about half a kilometer in that direction." He pointed toward a ridge of dark rocks that rose from the flat red landscape. Jae-woo sighed. "We have 3 days of air left. The ship can't stay in orbit much longer than that." "I know," said Ta-sung. "That's plenty of time." The team of 6 had been sent to survey KX-42 for possible mining. No one expected to find anything interesting. The planet was dead. It had no plants, no animals, not even bacteria. Just dust and rocks. But then Ta-sung's instruments had picked up the signal. Do-yeon, the youngest member of the team, moved to stand beside Ta-sung. "What do you think it is?" she asked. Her eyes were wide with excitement behind her visor. "I don't know," said Ta-sung. "But it's not natural. The pattern repeats exactly every 42 seconds. Hyun-ki, the team's language expert, joined them. "Could it be from the early exploration teams?" "No," said Ta-sung. "The records show no one has ever landed in this area before." Jae-woo looked at the sky. The sun was small and dim here, giving little warmth. "Let's get moving then. I don't want to be out here when night falls." The team walked in silence toward the ridge. Each step kicked up a cloud of red dust that settled slowly in the thin air. Their heavy oxygen tanks made walking difficult. As they got closer to the ridge, Ta-sung's device beeped faster. "We're getting close," he said. When they reached the ridge, they saw nothing special at first. Just more rocks and dust. But the device now beeped constantly. "It should be right here," said Ta-sung, confused. He walked in a small circle, looking at the ground. Min-soo, the team's geologist, knelt down and brushed away some dust. "Look at this," he said. The others gathered around. Under the dust was a smooth, dark surface. It wasn't rock. It was too perfect, too flat. "Clear more of it," ordered Jiwoo. The team used their hands to push away the dust. Soon they had uncovered a large square of the dark material, about 3 meters across. "It's artificial," said Min-soo, tapping it with his gloved hand. "Some kind of metal or alloy." In-ho, the engineer, took out a small tool and scratched the surface. "It's harder than anything I've seen before," he said. Ta-sung's device now screamed with beeps. "The signal is coming from directly below us." Jae-woo looked at each member of her team. They were all waiting for her decision. "In-ho," she said finally, "can you find a way to open this?" In-ho nodded and began examining the edges of the square. After a few minutes, he found a small indentation. When he pressed it, a seam appeared in the center of the square. The team stepped back as the 2 halves of the square slid apart, revealing a dark hole. Cool air rushed out, making the dust swirl around them. "There's a breathable atmosphere down there," said Min-soo, checking his instruments. "And the temperature is stable." Tai-sung peered into the darkness. His device showed the signal was coming from deep inside. "Whatever's sending that signal," he said, "it's been waiting for someone to find it." Jae-woo turned on her suit lights and stepped to the edge of the opening. "Well," she said, "let's not keep it waiting any longer." One by one, the team descended into the darkness, not knowing they were about to make the greatest discovery in human history. The stairway led deep underground. The team moved carefully, their suit lights cutting through the darkness. After descending for what seemed like a long time, they reached a large room. "Turn on the area lights," ordered Jiwoo. Hyun-ho set up portable lights around the room. As the space brightened, they all stood still in amazement. The room was huge. Its walls were made of the same dark material as the entrance cover. Strange symbols covered the walls from floor to ceiling. In the center of the room was a round platform with a tall console rising from it. "This is not human-made," whispered Hyun-ki, moving toward the wall to examine the symbols. "This writing. I've never seen anything like it." Tai-sung checked his device. "The signal is coming from that console." Min-soo ran a scanner over the walls. "This place is millions of years old, but it's in perfect condition. That's impossible." Do-yeon walked slowly around the room, her eyes wide. "Look at the floor," she said. The floor was covered with more symbols, arranged in circles around the central platform. "Can we remove our helmets?" asked Yeon-ho. "The air raid's clean." Jae-woo nodded. "Yes, but keep your suits on." One by one, they took off their helmets. The air felt cool and strangely fresh for a place so old and deep underground. Hyun-ki touched the wall gently. "These symbols, they seem to be grouped in patterns, like sentences or paragraphs." "Look at this," called Tai-sung from the central console. The others joined him. The console had no buttons or switches. Its smooth surface reflected their faces like a dark mirror. "How does it work?" asked Ji-woo. Do-yeon reached out her hand. "Maybe it's touch-activated." Her fingers brushed the surface of the console. Instantly, the console lit up with a soft blue glow. The team stepped back in surprise. A humming sound filled the room. Then, from the center of the console, a beam of light shot upward. The light spread and took shape, forming a figure that floated above the console. It was a hologram of a person. The figure looked almost human, but not quite. It was tall and thin with large eyes and smooth skin. It wore simple clothes that seemed to flow like water. Then the figure spoke. What shocked the team most was not that it spoke, but what language it used. "Hello," it said in perfect Korean. "I am Guardian Kyun. Welcome to the repository of the CO." The team stared in disbelief. How do you know our language?" asked Hyun-ki finally. The hologram turned toward him. "I have been monitoring your communications since you entered this star system. I learned your language from your transmissions. I have been waiting for visitors for a very long time." "How long?" asked Ta-sung. 5,327,000 years, said Kyun simply. The team looked at each other in shock. "That's not possible," said Min-soo. "No technology could last that long." "The technology of the CO was far advanced beyond your own," said Kyun. "This facility was designed to survive until new intelligent life evolved or arrived on this planet." "Who were the CO?" asked Ji-woo. "The CO were the people of this world," said Kyun. "This planet was once full of life. The CO built great cities and explored the stars." "What happened to them?" asked Do-yeon softly. Kyun's expression changed slightly, showing what might have been sadness. "They were destroyed," it said. "Their civilization, their species, everything they built except this repository was wiped away." "By what?" asked Ta-sung. "By a force they called the Silence," said Kyun. "A cosmic entity that consumes worlds and extinguishes consciousness." The hologram's eyes seemed to look at each of them in turn. "The CO created me to warn others," Kyun continued, "and to share their knowledge with worthy successors." "Why us?" asked Ji-woo. "Why humans?" "Because," said Kyun, "like the CO, you have the capacity for great compassion and terrible destruction. You stand at the same crossroads they once did." The hologram raised its hand, and suddenly the walls of the room came alive with moving images. They showed beautiful cities, strange creatures, and stars that no human had ever seen. "These are the memories of a dead world," said Kyun. "I have been keeping them safe for you." The team stood in silence, watching the images of a world that no longer existed. Cities that reached toward the sky, oceans filled with strange creatures, forests of plants unlike anything on Earth. "I don't understand," said Ji-woo, breaking the silence. "If you've been here for over 5 million years, how are you still functioning?" Hyun's hologram smiled. The CO built this facility to last. It draws power from the planet's core. As long as this world exists, so will I. Tai Sung stepped forward. And your purpose is to share the CO's knowledge. Yes, said Kyun, but also to warn you. The silence is still out there. Hyun Ki moved closer to the walls, studying the moving images. These symbols, can you teach us to read them? I can, said Kyun, but there is much to learn. The CO collected knowledge for millions of years. Their science, art, philosophy, it is all here. Do Yun touched the console gently. Why did they choose to preserve all this? They must have known they were going to die. The hologram's expression grew solemn. The CO believed that knowledge should never die, even if they did. They hoped that someday another intelligent species would find this place and learn from their achievements and from their mistakes. What mistakes? Asked Min-soo. Kyun waved a hand, and the images on the walls changed. Now they showed massive ships traveling between stars. The CO explored far into space, explained Kyun. They found many worlds with life, but none with intelligence like their own. They were alone in their part of the galaxy, or so they thought. The images shifted again, showing a dark region of space where stars seemed to vanish. Then they found the silence, continued Kyun. At first, they didn't understand what they were seeing. Stars were disappearing. Entire systems going dark. Eunho frowned. Like black holes. No, said Kyun. Black holes are natural. This was something else. Something that moved with purpose. Are you saying it was alive? Asked Ta Sung. His voice hushed. The CO weren't sure, replied Kyun. But they knew it was dangerous. When they tried to study it, it noticed them, and then it came for their world. The images on the wall now showed the beautiful CO cities burning, massive ships falling from the sky, the blue oceans turning black. The CO fought, said Kyun, but the silence was too powerful. In their final days, they built this repository deep underground, where the silence couldn't detect it. They poured all their knowledge into it, and created me to protect it. You've been alone all this time, said Du Yun softly, waiting for someone to find you. Yes, said Kyun. I have watched this planet turn from a world of ashes to a world of dust. I have listened to the stars, learning the languages of any signals I could detect. I knew that someday, someone would come. Je-woo looked troubled. If this silence destroyed the CO, could it threaten Earth? It is possible, said Kyun. The CO tried to warn other civilizations they had detected, but it only drew the silence's attention to those worlds. The team exchanged worried glances. Then we should leave, said Min-soo. We should forget we found this place. No, said Ta Sung firmly. If this threat is real, we need to know about it. We need the CO's knowledge. Kyun nodded. The CO believed that knowledge was the only weapon against the silence. That is why they created this repository, not just to preserve their memory, but to give future civilizations a chance they didn't have. How do we know any of this is real? Asked Ji-woo. This could all be a story. I can show you proofs, said Kyun. The CO mapped the silence's movements. If the pattern held, it would have passed through star systems you know. Systems where stars have mysteriously dimmed or vanished. Tai Sung's eyes widened. The Boots Void. The TIC 8,462,852 star. Yes, said Kyun. Those are signs of the silence's passage. If what you're saying is true, said Je-woo slowly, then humanity needs to know. Kyun's hologram seemed to grow brighter. Then let me show you what the CO knew. But first, you must understand who they were, and why they believed your kind might succeed where they failed. Kyun showed the team more images from the past. The CO had been tall, graceful beings with 4 arms and large eyes that could see in the dark. Their skin changed color with their moves, blue for calm, purple for joy, red for anger. They lived in cities built from a crystal-like material that captured sunlight. They were peaceful, said Kyun. They studied the stars for thousands of years before they built ships to visit them. The walls displayed CO ships, beautiful vessels that looked like giant silver leaves. When did they first notice the silence? Asked Ta Sung. 3,000 years before their end, replied Kyun. A research ship was studying a distant star system when they saw it happen. Watch. The image changed to show a view from space, a solar system with 7 planets circling a yellow star. Then, slowly, something moved across the star. Not a planet or a moon. Something else. Something that didn't reflect light but seemed to swallow it. What is that? Whispered Du Yun. The CO never knew its true nature, said Kyun. But they watched as it consumed the star's energy. Day by day, the star grew dimmer. The planets froze. All life on them died. It eats stars, asked Min Su in disbelief. Not just stars, said Kyun. The CO discovered that the silence targets worlds with intelligent life. It is drawn to the energy of consciousness itself. Jewu frowned. That's not possible. Consciousness isn't a form of energy that can be detected from space. The CO thought as you do, said Kyun, until they learned otherwise. The images changed again, showing CO scientists working frantically in labs. The CO discovered that conscious minds create patterns in space-time, explained Kyun. Patterns that can be detected with the right technology. The silence has that ability. And it hunts consciousness, asked Hyun-ki. Yes. The CO tried to warn other civilizations they had discovered, but it was too late. The silence followed their communications. In trying to save others, they revealed more targets. Yun-ho looked worried. If that's true, then we shouldn't send any messages about this back to Earth. We could lead this thing right to our home. Jae-woo nodded. All communication with the ship stays on secure channels. Nothing about the silence or the CO gets transmitted in the open. A wise decision, said Kyun. The CO came to the same conclusion, but too late. How did they fight it? Asked Ta Sung. Hyun's hologram dimmed slightly. They tried many ways. Weapons of incredible power. Shields made from artificial gravity. They even tried to hide their consciousness by creating devices to mask the patterns. Did anything work? Asked Min Su. Briefly, said Kyun. The consciousness masking technology bought them time. But the silence adapted. In the end, they could only save their knowledge, not themselves. So they built you, said Du Yun. Yes, I am their legacy. I contain all they knew and all they were. Their final hope was that another species might succeed where they failed. Tai Sung stepped forward. Show us the CO's technology. If the silence is still out there, humanity needs to prepare. I will share their knowledge, said Kyun. But first I must know if you are ready for it. The CO's technology could save humanity or destroy it if used unwisely. How can you judge if we're ready? Asked Jiwoo. The CO created a test, said Kyun. A way to measure a species' wisdom and compassion. What kind of test? Asked Hyun-ki. First, tell me about your people, said Kyun. Show me who humans are. Your history, your choices, your values. The team looked at each other, uncertain. How do we do that? Asked Min Su. Through your stories, said Kyun. The CO believed that a species reveals its true nature through the stories it tells. Do Yun stepped forward. I'll start, she said. I'll tell you about Earth. As Du Yun began to speak, Kyun listened intently. The fate of 2 worlds, one dead, one still living, hung on the stories of humanity that would be told in this ancient chamber, deep beneath the red dust of a forgotten planet. For hours, the team took turns telling Kyun about humanity. They spoke of Earth's many countries and cultures. They told stories of war and peace, of scientific discoveries and artistic creations. Humans fight each other often, admitted Jiwoo. But we also work together. We've built space stations where scientists from different countries live side by side. We make mistakes, added Ta Sung, but we learn from them. After using atomic weapons, we created treaties to prevent their use again. Kyun listened to everything without speaking. The hologram's face was hard to read, but its eyes seemed to watch them closely. Finally, when they had finished, Kyun spoke. Your species is young. The CO were exploring space when humans were still learning to make fire, but you have advanced quickly. Too quickly, some would say, said Min-soo. We've damaged our planet in our rush for progress. But we're trying to fix those mistakes, said Du-yeon quickly. We're developing clean energy, replanting forests. Kyun nodded. The CO made similar mistakes in their early days. What matters is the direction you are moving now. The hologram waved a hand, and new images appeared on the walls. They showed complex machines, strange materials, and mathematical formulas. This is what the CO can offer you, said Kyun. Energy sources more powerful than anything you have imagined. Materials stronger than any metal. Medicines that could cure your most deadly diseases. The team stared at the images in wonder. With this knowledge, said Kyun, you could solve many of Earth's problems. But you could also create weapons more dangerous than any you have now. We need time to study this, said Ta Sung, his eyes wide with excitement. There must be years' worth of research here. There is no time, said Kyun. The repository's power is finally failing after millions of years. I can transfer the knowledge to a storage device, but I must do it soon. What knowledge will you give us? Asked Ji-woo cautiously. That depends on you, replied Kyun. The CO programmed me to judge what level of technology a species is ready for. And how have you judged us? Asked Hyun-ki. Kyun was silent for a moment. Your history troubles me. You have fought many wars. You have killed millions of your own kind. But I also see hope. You value life. You seek knowledge. You dream of a better future. So will you help us? Asked Du-yeon. I will share some of the CO's knowledge, said Kyun. Not all, but enough to help you prepare for the silence, should it ever find your world. Tai Sung stepped forward eagerly. How do we receive this knowledge? Kyun pointed to a small depression in the console. Place your storage device here. I will transfer what you need. In-ho took out a data crystal from his equipment bag. Will this work? Yes, said Kyun. But before I transfer the knowledge, you must understand something important. The team looked at Kyun expectantly. The CO believed that advanced technology without wisdom is dangerous, said Kyun. They programmed me to give knowledge only to those who would use it wisely. And you think we will? Asked Ji-woo. I am hopeful, said Kyun, but not certain. That is why you must face one final test. What test? Asked Min-soo, sounding worried. A test of character, said Kyun. The CO believed that a species' worth is measured not by its power, but by the choices it makes when facing difficult decisions. The lights in the room dimmed suddenly. The floor beneath the team began to shake. What's happening? Shouted Ji-woo over the rumbling noise. The test begins now, said Kyun. The hologram's voice was calm despite the chaos around them. How you respond will determine the future of your species. The room shook harder. Dust fell from the ceiling. A loud crack appeared in one wall. The repository is collapsing, said Kyun. You must make your choices quickly. The shaking grew stronger. Large pieces of the ceiling crashed to the floor. The team ran for cover. We need to get out of here, shouted Ji-woo. But the knowledge. Ta Sung pointed at the console where Kyun's hologram still stood calmly. There's no time. Min-soo grabbed Ta Sung's arm. We'll be buried alive. Another loud crack split the air. Part of the floor dropped away, creating a deep pit between the team and the exit. We're trapped, said Hyun-ki, backing away from the edge. Kyun's voice rose above the noise. You have two choices, the hologram said. There is an emergency exit on the far side of this room. Kyun pointed to a small door that had appeared in the wall. It will take you safely to the surface. And the second choice? Asked Jiwoo. Stay and complete the knowledge transfer, said Kyun. But the chances of all of you surviving are small. The team looked at each other. The room continued to fall apart around them. We need to leave, said Min-soo firmly. No knowledge is worth our lives. But this knowledge could save Earth, argued Ta-sung. If the silence is real, humanity needs this information. There must be another way, said Do-yeon. She turned to Kyun. Can't you transfer the knowledge faster? No, said Kyun. The process cannot be rushed. Another section of ceiling fell, narrowly missing Yun-ho. He jumped back, bumping into the console. The data crystal he had been holding fell from his hand and slid toward the pit. The crystal, shouted Ta-sung. Do-yeon dove forward, catching the crystal just before it fell into the darkness. But the floor under her began to crack. Do-yeon. Jiwoo reached for her, but she was too far away. The floor tilted. Do-yeon slid toward the edge of the pit. She grabbed a jutting piece of metal, stopping her fall. The data crystal was clutched tightly in her other hand. Help me, she cried. Jiwoo looked at the exit door, then back at Do-yeon. Without hesitation, she moved toward the edge of the pit. Captain, it's too dangerous, shouted Min-soo. I'm not leaving anyone behind, said Jiwoo. She lay flat on the floor and stretched out her arm toward Do-yeon. Grab my hand. Do-yeon reached up, but their fingers were still inches apart. I need to get closer, said Jiwoo. She inched forward until half her body was hanging over the edge. Tai-sung and Hyun-ki grabbed Jiwoo's legs to keep her from falling. With their help, she stretched further. This time, Do-yeon caught her hand. Slowly, the team pulled both women back from the edge. Once they were safe, Jiwoo looked at Kyun. We're not leaving without the knowledge, but we're not leaving anyone behind either. She turned to the team. Yun-ho placed the crystal in the console. The rest of you, head for the exit. I'll stay until the transfer is complete. No, said Ta-sung. We came together. We leave together. One by one, the others nodded in agreement. Yun-ho put the crystal in the console depression. It began to glow with a blue light. Transfer started, said Kyun. Time required. 4 minutes. That's too long, said Min-soo, looking up at the crumbling ceiling. We'll make it, said Jiwoo firmly. She stood with her team in a tight circle around the console as the room continued to collapse around them. Suddenly, the shaking stopped. The falling debris froze in midair. The cracked walls repaired themselves. The pit in the floor closed up, as if it had never been there. The team looked around in confusion. What's happening? Asked Hyun-ki. Kyun's hologram smiled. The test is complete. Test. Jiwoo stared at Kyun. You mean this wasn't real? The danger seemed real to you, said Kyun. That was what mattered. I needed to see what choices you would make when faced with death. And, asked Ha-sung. You chose to risk yourselves for knowledge that could save others, said Kyun. And more importantly, you refused to abandon one of your own. The hologram's eyes seemed to glow brighter. The CO would be proud, said Kyun. You have passed the test. The team stood in silence as they processed what had just happened. The room was now completely restored, with no sign of the destruction they had witnessed. It wasn't real, said Min-soo, touching a nearby wall that had been cracked moments before. How is that possible? The CO were masters of sensory technology, explained Kyun. What you experienced was a simulation designed to feel real in every way. Jiwoo's expression hardened. You made us think we were about to die. Yes, said Kyun simply. The test needed to be convincing. Your reactions needed to be genuine. So what happens now? Asked Ha-sung. You said we passed the test. Kyun nodded. The knowledge transfer can begin. But first, I must show you something important. The hologram waved a hand, and the walls changed again. This time they showed planets that looked much like Earth. Green continents, blue oceans, white clouds. These were other worlds the CO found with intelligent life, said Kuan. They tried to warn them about the silence. What happened to them? Asked Hyun-ki. Some refused to believe the warning, said Kuan. They thought the CO were trying to scare them for some unknown purpose. They did nothing to prepare. The images showed one of the beautiful planets being consumed by darkness. Others believed, continued Kuan, but they used the warning as an excuse to build terrible weapons. They fought wars over resources. They destroyed themselves before the silence ever reached them. Another planet appeared, covered in fire and smoke. The CO learned a painful lesson, said Kuan. Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. That is why they created the test. They wanted to be sure that those who received their knowledge would use it wisely. And you think we will? Asked Du-Yun. I believe you have the potential, said Kuan. You value both knowledge and life. You are willing to take risks for the greater good, but you don't abandon your own people. The hologram turned to the console. The transfer can now begin. Eun-ho stepped forward with the data crystal. What exactly will you give us? The knowledge you need most, said Kuan. Energy technology to help your planet heal. Medical science to cure diseases. And defense systems that might protect you from the silence, should it ever find Earth. Eun-ho placed the crystal in the depression on the console. It began to glow with a bright blue light. Transfer beginning, said Kuan. This will take several minutes. As they waited, Du-Yun approached the hologram. There's something I don't understand, she said. If the silence has been out there for millions of years, why hasn't it found Earth yet? The universe is vast, replied Kuan. And the silence moves slowly. It may be centuries before it reaches your part of the galaxy, or it may never find you at all. But you still think we need to prepare, said Ji-woo. Yes, said Kuan. The CO believed it was better to be prepared for a threat that never comes than to be unprepared for one that does. The console beeped, and the blue light grew brighter. Transfer 50% complete, said Kuan. Ta-sung watched the process with excitement. I can't wait to study this knowledge. The advances we could make. Remember, said Kuan, the goal is not just to advance, but to advance wisely. The CO learned that lesson too late. What do you mean? Asked Hyun-ki. The CO's own technology may have attracted the silence, said Kuan. Their energy sources were powerful, but created unique patterns in space-time, patterns that the silence could detect from far away. The team exchanged worried glances. Are you giving us the same technology? Asked Ji-woo. No, said Kuan. I am giving you improved versions. The CO's final discoveries before their end. Designs that might be safer. Might be, asked Min-soo. Nothing is certain, said Kuan. The CO never had a chance to test these designs. You will be the first. The console beeped again. Transfer complete, announced Kuan. Eun-ho carefully removed the data crystal from the console. It glowed with a soft blue light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. It's warm, he said with surprise. The crystal now contains selected knowledge from 5 million years of CO civilization, said Kuan. Energy that could power your world for centuries without harming your environment. Medicines that could cure your most deadly diseases. Materials stronger than any metal you have discovered. Tai-sung looked at the small crystal with wonder. All that knowledge in something so small. The CO mastered data storage long ago, said Kuan. That crystal could hold the entire written history of your species and still have room for more. Ji-woo stepped forward. What about the silence? Does the crystal contain information about it? Yes, said Kuan. Everything the CO knew about the silence is there. Its patterns of movement, the ways it detects civilizations, and the defenses the CO were developing when they ran out of time. Will these defenses work? Asked Min-soo. They are untested, admitted Kuan, but they represent the CO's best ideas. They believed that consciousness itself was the key. What do you mean? Asked Hyun-ki. The silence is drawn to the patterns created by conscious minds, explained Kyun. The CEO's final theory was that those same patterns, properly amplified, might repel or even harm the silence. Like fighting fire with fire, said Do-yeon. Yes, said Kyun. The crystal contains designs for devices that could generate these patterns safely. If the silence ever approaches Earth, these devices might protect you. Yun-ho carefully placed the crystal in a protective case and sealed it. We'll study everything carefully before we use any of it, he promised. Good, said Kyun. The CEO would want you to proceed with caution. They learned through bitter experience that every new technology brings both benefits and dangers. What else did the CEO believe? Asked Do-yeon. What was important to them? Kyun's hologram seemed to grow more vibrant. They believed that consciousness was the most precious thing in the universe, not just their own, but all consciousness, wherever it might exist. Why? Asked Jiwoo. Because they saw consciousness as the universe's way of understanding itself, said Kyun. Each conscious species perceives reality in a unique way. Each adds something valuable to the cosmic story. That's a beautiful way to think about it, said Hyun-ki. The CEO believed it was their duty to protect and nurture consciousness wherever they found it, continued Kyun. When they realized they could not save themselves, they chose to help others who might come after them. Like us, said Ta-sung quietly. Yes, said Kyun. They hoped that humanity might succeed where they failed, that you might find a way to defeat the silence and preserve consciousness throughout the galaxy. The team was silent for a moment, feeling the weight of this inheritance. It's a big responsibility, said Jiwoo finally. One that the CEO believed you could handle, said Kyun. They saw in early human signals the same qualities they valued: curiosity, creativity, and compassion. We'll do our best to live up to their faith in us, said Do-yeon. Kyun nodded. There is one more thing I must tell you before you leave. What is it? Asked Ta-sung. The repository's power is truly failing now, said Kyun. Once you leave, I will shut down most systems to preserve the core memory banks. I may not be able to speak with you again if you return. You're going to sleep? Asked Do-yeon. In a manner of speaking, said Kyun. I will continue to monitor for signals, but I will not have power to maintain this form or this facility. The knowledge you carry with you may be all that remains of the CEO. Jiwoo looked troubled. Is there anything we can do to help you? No, said Kyun. The repository has served its purpose. I have completed my mission by passing the CEO's knowledge to worthy successors. The hologram's light flickered briefly. It is time for you to return to your ship, said Kyun. Take what you have learned back to Earth. Use it wisely. We will, promised Jiwoo, and we won't forget you or the CEO. Then my purpose is fulfilled, said Kyun. The voice of a dead world has been heard at last. As the team prepared to leave, the lights in the repository dimmed. The images on the walls faded slowly, like memories slipping away. Before you go, said Kyun, there is one final truth I must share. The team turned back to face the hologram. What truth? Asked Jiwoo. I am not simply an artificial intelligence, said Kyun. I am more. The hologram changed. Instead of the tall, graceful form of a CEO, it now showed a being that looked almost human. This new form wore simple clothes and had gentle eyes. My name was Kim, said the hologram. I was the last scientist of the CEO. When we knew our world was doomed, I transferred my consciousness patterns into this system. The team stared in shock. You're really one of them, whispered Do-yeon. In a way, said Kim. Not fully alive as you understand it, but more than just a program. I carry the memories and personality of the being I once was. Why are you telling us this now? Asked Ta-sung. Because I wanted you to know that the CEO's hope for the future was so strong that one of us chose to remain behind, said Kim. I gave up physical existence to wait here, alone, for millions of years. That is how much we believed in the possibility of you. Hyun-ki stepped forward. How strange that your name sounds like a human Korean name. Kim smiled. Perhaps not so strange. The universe has patterns that repeat across time and space. Or perhaps it is just a happy coincidence that made our meeting feel like it was meant to be. Can we take you with us? Asked Du-Yun suddenly. Download you to the crystal too. Kim shook his head. My consciousness is too complex for the crystal, and my purpose is complete. It is time for me to rest. The lights dimmed further. More systems around the room shut down. The repository's last power reserves are being transferred to the crystal, explained Kim. The knowledge it contains will now be protected by special energy fields. It should survive for thousands of years, even if exposed to extreme conditions. We'll keep it safe, promised Jiwoo. I know you will, said Kim. His form was growing fainter. Return to your world. Share what you have learned. Prepare. And remember the CO not as a warning, but as a promise of what consciousness can achieve. The team gathered their equipment. Each of them took one last look around the ancient chamber. It's time to go, said Jiwoo softly. As they walked toward the exit, Kim's voice followed them. The CO had a saying, knowledge passes from hand to hand, like a torch in the dark. Now that torch is yours to carry. They climbed the long stairway back to the surface. Behind them, the lights of the repository flickered in and went dark. 5 million years of waiting had come to an end. Outside, the red dust of KX-42 swirled around them. The planet seemed different now. Not just a dead world, but a monument to a civilization that had faced its end with courage and hope. The team made their way back across the plain to where their ship waited. The small crystal in Eunho's pack contained the legacy of an entire world. On the journey back to Earth, the team spent many hours discussing what they had discovered. They knew that the knowledge they carried would change humanity forever. New energy sources, advanced medicines, defenses against a threat that might never come, or might be approaching even now. But the greatest gift from the CO wasn't technology. It was a new understanding of their place in the universe. Humans were not alone in valuing knowledge, in seeking connection, in facing the unknown with courage. As their ship approached Earth, Jiwoo gathered the team one last time. What we found wasn't just knowledge, she said. It was trust. A civilization we never knew existed believed in us enough to wait 5 million years to give us this chance. So what do we do now? Asked Min-soo. We make sure their trust wasn't misplaced, said Jiwoo. We become the voice for their dead world. The blue and green Earth grew larger in their view screen. Their home, still full of life and possibility. And now, carrying the torch passed from a long-dead world, humanity would face the stars with new wisdom and purpose.